It's a mark of our national temperament, I suppose, that while the foreign press delights in tales of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and his supposed 40 prostitutes in Thailand, the true threat to the royal Christmas lies not in sordid scandal, but in song, or rather the absence of it. This year's great royal crisis is not a tabloid affair, but a choral one. At the heart of it all is St. Mary Magdalene's Sandringham, and this modest Norfolk church that becomes at Christmas each year the world's most photographed parish. It's where the royal family gathers, where the carols drift off after the cold air, and where even the most cynical observer finds a flicker of English tradition alive. But this year, the choir that carries that fragile soundscape has gone silent. Several of its members have walked out in protest, following the departure of Dr. Clare Stewart, the long-serving and much-loved director of music. Dr. Stewart's resignation came after months of tension with the Vicar, the Reverend Paul Williams, who doubles as the King's domestic chaplain. His ambition, reportedly, was to modernise, to raise the standards, to professionalise a volunteer choir, and, somewhat jarringly, to introduce jazz hands to the nave. The reforms, outlined in a report by Cathedral Director Tansy Castledine, were brutal in their candour. The choir, it declared, had no knowledge of music or singing technique and should aspire to higher standards. For Dr. Stewart and her loyal choristers, it was an affront. Her counterblast came in the form of a 28-page dossier defending the spirit of the choir, one rooted in community, conviviality and continuity rather than in professional polish. What began as a musical dispute soon turned into a crisis of identity for the parish. Rehearsals dwindled, voices fell silent, and the King's Christmas service, that gentle pageant of faith, family and national tradition, now faces the prospect of proceeding without its music. In every other year, this might have been a small matter, but in his reign, symbolism matters deeply, and King Charles has invested personal energy into Sandringham's spiritual life. He appointed Reverend Williams himself. For a monarch who has made faith, duty and the rhythm of worship central to his image, a divided choir on Christmas morning would be an embarrassment of ecclesiastical proportions. The optics of a fractured congregation singing half-heartedly while choristers stand outside in protest could rival the damage done by Andrew's continuing scandals. The irony, of course, is that while the world fixates on royal disgrace, it is these smaller dramas that reveal the crown's real fragility. Andrew may have forfeited titles, dignity and reputation, but he's no longer at the centre of the institution's moral life. The choir, however, is part of its liturgical heart. Its sound is part of the royal Christmas brand. Without it, Sandringham is merely another cold church in winter. There is, too, a wider point about the culture war creeping even into the choir stalls. The Reverend Williams's push for modernisation reflects the Church of England struggling between professionalism and participation, excellence and inclusivity. Were there any jazz hands when the Pope was praying with King Charles in the Vatican? No. Dr. Stewart's defenders speak of warmth, mentorship and tradition. Her critics invoke rigour and reputation. It's a microcosm of the national argument about what Britain values more, performance or belonging. For the King, the lesson is delicate but clear. You may reform the constitution, you may slim down the monarchy, but you tamper with the choir at your peril. The sound of Once in Royal David City floating across the Norfolk air is not just sentiment, it is part of the living theatre of our monarchy, and so as headlines swirl with lurid tales of Andrew's exile and international disgrace, the real crisis is one of harmony, not the moral harmony of the House of Windsor, but the literal harmony of its Christmas carols. In a reign already haunted by division, how bitterly apt that even the choir should strike the wrong note. If the King wishes for a peaceful Christmas, he may have to intervene not in scandal but in song, not to silence Andrew but to coax back its choristers, because when the music stops at Sandringham, it's not just the carols that fall quiet, it's the spirit of continuity itself.